This is The Cut, American Whiskey Daily. A distillery that opened its doors in 2024 was bankrupt by 2026. And this week, Sazerac bought it at a court-ordered auction for $20 million. Built new, sold off distressed, inside 2 years. That's not a bottle story. That's the industry telling you exactly how thin the margin is for anyone trying to build capacity from scratch right now. I'm John from Chasing the Unicorn podcast. Here's what moved today. August 24th, 2026. Here's the fast version. Girard County Distilling opened in Lancaster, Kentucky in 2024. 2 column stills, 2 20,000 square foot warehouses, 210 acres. Big, modern, built to last. It didn't. The owner got sued over roughly $26 million in defaulted loans. The place went into receivership and a court ordered it sold. The winning bidder closed on August 21st for $20 million through a Sazerac affiliate called Tom Collins Distilling. That makes Girard County Sazerac's 4th Kentucky distillery, joining Buffalo Trace, Barton 1792, and Glenmore. Sazerac now employs close to 3,000 people in Kentucky, and they've been spending real money everywhere else too. $50 million at Barton, over $1 billion at Buffalo Trace, $40 million at Glenmore. So why does a 2-year-old distillery collapse that fast? Probably too much capacity, built too fast, without the distribution or brand recognition to carry it. And why does Sazerac want it? Because a finished plant at a discount beats building one from scratch. And distressed capacity is cheap right now because somebody else overbuilt and couldn't finance the ride. Nothing changes on your shelf this week. What changed is who owns the next few years of Kentucky production. And that eventually shows up in what gets bottled. Now, today's Rickhouse. Because this isn't just one purchase, it's a good excuse to actually learn who runs this industry, since almost everything else that happened this week traces back to one of 4 names. 4 companies make roughly 75% of all American bourbon. Beam Suntory, Jim Beam, Knob Creek, Maker's Mark is the volume leader. Brown-Forman, Jack Daniels, Woodford Reserve, Old Forester is the one currently drawing acquisition interest from other players. Heaven Hill, Elijah Craig, Larceny, Evan Williams runs the best value tier lineup in bourbon. And Sazerac, the company that just bought Girard County, owns Buffalo Trace, Eagle Rare, Blanton's, and the Pappy Van Winkle joint venture. Sazerac's roster is the most allocated in the business. Nearly every bottle the secondary market obsesses over traces back to them. That matters today for a second reason. Down in Texas, a distributor called Johnson Brothers Maverick just promoted a guy named Russell Motts to run the whole state operation. He'd been running their Brown-Forman division, which expanded under a 2025 partnership deal. In a fragmented 3-tier state like Texas, whoever runs the wholesale layer decides which allocated Woodford, Old Forester, and Jack Daniels actually make it onto a given shelf. So in 1 week, you've got a Big 4 producer buying physical capacity in Kentucky and a Big 4 producer's distribution arm getting a new advocate running the largest state in the country. Same industry, 2 different levers, both pulled in the same 72 hours. Here's my take. None of this is dramatic on its own. A bankruptcy auction, a GM promotion, but knowing which brand belongs to which company is what turns those 2 boring headlines into a pattern. It tells you why certain bottles get scarce together, why certain distilleries expand together, and why a plant purchase you never heard of can quietly affect a bottle you've been chasing for years. So here's what it is. When people talk about the Big 4, they mean Beam Suntory, Brown-Forman, Sazerac, and Heaven Hill. 4 companies that between them make about 3 out of every 4 bottles of American bourbon. Everything else, every craft label and every MGP source brand you've never heard of, is splitting the other quarter. Think of it like 4 record labels that happen to own most of the artists you listen to. You don't need to know the label to enjoy the song, but once you do, you start noticing which artists tour together, which ones get promoted together, and which ones quietly go quiet at the same time. What this changes. Once you know Sazerac owns Buffalo Trace, Eagle Rare, and Blanton's, a headline about Sazerac buying a distillery in Girard County stops being abstract corporate news. It's a company that already controls a chunk of your allocated shelf, getting bigger. Log today's pour in the Rickhouse and tag it by which of the Big 4 made it. Over time, your pour print will show you which house style you actually gravitate toward. Also in this window, before I let you go, one thing worth your attention this week, and it's not a bottle you drink, it's a bottle you enter to win. Pappy & Company opened a sweepstakes called Bourbon for Good, running through August 28th. The prize is a bottle of Pappy Van Winkle's Family Reserve 20-year, personally signed by Julian P. Van Winkle III and Preston Van Winkle. You can enter with a purchase of $75 or more at pappyco.com or, and this is the part worth knowing, with a free survey entry, capped at 10 entries per person. That's about as low a barrier as you'll find anywhere into the Pappy name. It won't change your Monday, but it costs you nothing to take the shot, and a signed 20-year Pappy is not a bottle you stumble into twice. One more thing. Here's the one thing to actually carry out of today. A distillery failing fast, a distributor promoting from inside, a sweepstakes for a bottle most of us will never hold. None of those are separate stories. They're the same four companies, moving in the background, deciding what gets built, what gets shipped, and what gets allocated years before it ever reaches your glass. Knowing their names doesn't get you a bottle. It gets you a reason the next headline actually makes sense. That's The Cut. The full American whiskey industry brief is free every morning at chasingtheunicornpodcast.com. I'm John Schuster. Thanks for joining me. Your unicorn is out there.